Chris Cunningham, owner of True Value Hardware Store in Tampa and a commercial real estate investor, is a classic Business Observer story subject. Chris has started multiple successful businesses and enjoys going deep to talk about his why and how he goes about building companies. To read stories like that and more, subscribe to the Business Observer. Go to businessobserverfl.com to sign up. Hello, and welcome to the Business Observer's From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Chris Cunningham, Tampa entrepreneur and owner of True Value America Store in Tampa. Chris, welcome, and thanks for being here.
It's a privilege, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent, Chris. We're going to talk a little bit about your career, being an entrepreneur, being a leader in the business community. We're going to get into that. You've done some interesting things. Before that, I want to get to know you outside of work. So I'm going to hit you with 3 rapid fire questions, super fast. Okay. Well, that's not going to be that fast. First one, who is one person, dead or alive, that you would like to have dinner with?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say probably Booker T. Washington. He's a throwback, but there was a debate. Yeah, he's a throwback, but he believes in blue collar work, and so me being in the blue collar field, I think he would be an awesome guy to meet. In the early 1900s, there was a kind of a debate. You know, should you go blue collar or should it be, just go straight to school? And I think the combination is great. But I would love to sit down and talk to Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, well, it's quite a life for sure. He did some amazing things. That's awesome. I love it. All right, what is one food you would take with you to a deserted island?
Man, if I'm going to a deserted island, I'm going to take a fruit that I can eat and plant the seed. So I'm probably going to go with a mango. I'm either going to go mango, watermelon, some orange, somewhere around that line so I can continue to eat. Yeah.
Interesting. You're not only taking a food you like, but you're smart and strategic about it.
Yeah. If I was talking to my doctor, he'd probably get me to take an avocado, something that has a seed that can be planted for sure.
Yeah. All right. I like it. And last question on that front, what are the 2 most used apps on your phone?
That's a great question. I think Waze is the best for directions. Waze saves a bunch of time.
Yes.
And it's something I recently picked up. I would say ChatGPT.
Really? So you're using ChatGPT off your phone. What are you, obviously, well, not to say obviously, what are you using it for? Is it work related, life, both?
For both. I mean, I think that ChatGPT is revolutionary. This reminds me of like when the computers came out or BlackBerry happened. ChatGPT evens the playing field for small businessmen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, I always feel like I think about it after the fact. Like, I come up with something and I'm like, you know what? I should have used ChatGPT for that, or at least get the idea going on it. I don't know if that's because I'm 50 years old and I'm too old for it. I don't know. But I don't think about it enough. But you actually have it on your phone and you use it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, people are kind of going from like Google to ChatGPT. So it's going to be a change even how business is done completely. So instead of Googling something, someone's going to ChatGPT it. So from business for people, it's kind of changed the game. Where before, like it was like Google app or paid words and things of that nature. Yeah. Now it's going to be more organic. Who are you naturally when someone checks you out?
Yeah, it's certainly, as you said, changed the game. It's a big change. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been an entrepreneur, business owner in a couple of different fields. Tell us kind of the overview of your business career.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years now. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do right out of school. I worked at a white collar job, so I started out working at HSBC. But essentially back in 2007, 2008, I bought an entrepreneurship magazine and I looked at the top 500 franchises and I said, this is where I'm going to start from. And so at the time, ServPro was there, Service Master, DKI International would be on the water restoration side. But then also there was like H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, and all these tax things. I didn't have enough money for water restoration at the time. To start a water restoration company, it's probably going to cost me maybe 40, 50 grand, something like that. Yeah. I didn't even have enough money at the time to actually start a H&R Block. I would have loved to, but I couldn't afford it. So I went with a lesser name franchise. And then 2 years later, I ended up breaking away from the franchise model and actually starting my own tax business. But the entrepreneurship magazine kind of like led me down that path. I had some white collar skills, but the opportunity to own my own business, I got into taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool that you you started very sort of humbly, right? You just figure, hey, this is what I want to do. I mean, what was that sort of inside? Where did that come from? Did you grow up around entrepreneurs, business owners, and why did you want to take that path?
Well, I always wanted to be able to kind of like control my own destiny. Like a lot of times, like when you're working for someone, you're limited to the growth potential. But I wanted it to be a great business. There's a lot of people that run businesses and work very hard, but they never get a chance to benefit from the fruits of their labor. And so that's why like the research came into play. Like I was relying on a source, so I didn't just pick a business. And so that's where it came from. I mean, growing up, I had some entrepreneurs in my family. My grandma was like a small time entrepreneur, but I learned so much from her. I spent a lot of the summers with her. So she was a retired teacher, and then but after after she got done teaching, she actually had a cosmetology license, and so she was in a country town, and so she put the beauty salon and converted the garage. And so I watched her, and that was one person that I learned from for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, and so now you have True Value. Tell us about that store and kind of what your sort of business is now.
So what happened in 2015? I sold the tax business, but I still had a passion for water restoration. I still wanted to get back into it. So instead of starting a franchise, I actually hired a professional. I gave him $15,000. He consulted me, and I got every license and certification that I could get. And I started a company called Dry 24 Water Restoration. And I still own that company. That business helps and specializes in helping people with unexpected circumstances like water, fire, flood, and mold. And then fast forward to like 2022, 2023, I was looking for ways to try to grow that business horizontally or vertically. And I don't know if you've been in Home Depot or Lowe's, a lot of times they run the other way. You walk in the door and then they go the opposite way. And so in the water restoration business, we would tear everything out, but then we put everything back together. And so the opportunity to actually buy for myself, but then also the opportunity to try to grow in something that can be scaled. It's always hard a lot of times just with the service businesses. So instead of starting a new business, I just opened up another profit center. I opened up the store. And then before I could actually buy the store, I started selling online because finding real estate is almost impossible. I don't know where you're located. Are you down in the Fort Myers area or Sarasota? Yeah. So in Tampa, it is really hard to find real estate.
Yeah.
And so I started selling on e-commerce. So we've got the supplies that I have in the store, I actually sell online. So like I have a business profit center where we sell on Amazon and Walmart, and then we sell directly. And then 2023, I got a call from the True Value rep, and he said, "Guess what? I think I found your spot." And I said, "Really? Where is it located?" And he said, "It's in North Tampa. It's the old Shell's feed store." And I said, "Shell's feed store?" But at first I wasn't 100%. I didn't fall in love with it at first, and then I drove by and I noticed something that the building had great bones. Yeah. And so I called Mr. Shell up on the phone. I said, "Mr. Shell, I'd like to buy your store. I hear that you're getting ready to retire." And well, he said, "You can have the store, but you gotta buy the block and you gotta pay my price."
That's it. Just buy the block and pay the price. That's it. Two minor things.
Yeah, two other things. And then I said yes. I had done the research. Real estate had been my passion. I didn't get into this, Mark, but the thing that the tax business allowed me to do is that I would work for 4 months out of the season, but the other 4 months, I started buying ugly ducklings. So I went back to where my grandfather is from, Dayton, Ohio, and I started buying homes that people walked away from and didn't want. Yeah. And so this gave me a chance to get back into real estate. The whole time I definitely wanted to, when I opened up this new profit center, I wanted to be able to buy the property.
Yeah. Oh, so you've done these, similar, sort of loosely related, like real estate, and obviously water restoration is related to real estate and True Value, and you bought this property. All these things, when you look big picture at all these businesses you've done, what are some keys to being a successful entrepreneur? What are some of the things that really top of mind to you to be successful?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times, like, people put you in a bucket. So, like, the way my grandma explained it to me is that it was a comma after you were born. You can be a water restorer, but you can also be a businessman. And then real estate has been my passion. I remember being at FAMU, and it was like the first book I fell in love with. Like, a lot of times they talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I read Retire Young, Retire Rich. And then I started reading about business and then real estate. So the whole time, and that goes into the point about the business. Like, sometimes you can't skip steps. We're in a microwave generation where people just want it in a snap, but that's just not how things work. So I've always had a passion for real estate, and actually I did opposite. I did everything opposite of like what Ace Hardware, when I was looking at Ace, told me, or even True Value at first. Their business model generally is that you go in a shopping center and you have an anchor store there. You want to be where Walmart is or Kroger's, this or that. Right. But I watched that McDonald's movie and it inspired me, and I was like, no, I want to actually be like some other entrepreneurs in my family. I want a chance to actually own the bricks, own the real estate. My grandfather, he was a lawyer and businessman, and he owned his real estate, and so, but the other thing I wanted to do, I had the water restoration business. It was successful. It was a good business, but I had an inspiration to actually go back and serve an underserved community. So the water restoration is a great business, and I enjoy it. But a lot of times when you go to urban areas, you hear terms called food deserts. But one term that's rarely talked about is called a retail desert. And so, like a lot of times in underserved Black, Latino communities, you don't find the same food companies, the same retail spaces, and so not only did I want to open up a store, but I wanted to actually have a chance to get back and become more involved in the community, and then even from my research, like in the Entrepreneurship magazine and looking at the top 10s, if you think about the top 10 franchises, they're all in urban areas a lot of times. They don't limit themselves, like Taco Bell. You look at Popeyes. You look at Subway. You look at Jersey Mike's. You're going to find them in Wendy's, McDonald's. You're going to find them in urban areas.
So I see, all these businesses, you also need other leaders in your organization besides yourself, right? Tell me about leadership. What do you look for in good leaders when you're hiring people for any position? But what stands out to you about good leadership characteristics?
Mark, that's a great question. I mean, if you think about it, often you hear people and they want to ask smart questions, and all along they're trying to figure out your IQ, right? They want to figure out how smart you are, and then sometimes you hear people talk about EQ. Your emotional intelligence, but very rarely do you hear people talk about AQ. And I think AQ is going to be the most important thing that you need in a business. If we're talking about business secrets, is your adaptability. How AQ, or some people call it adverse. What's going to happen when something goes wrong? Like what's going to happen? I heard Mike Tyson once say, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched." What's going to happen when things are going bad?
Get punched. Yeah. So you look for those. I
look for AQ.
Yeah, I like that. And you talked about something, and from the corner office, we ask a lot of leaders that we interview, how do you respond to that adversity? When you're punched in the mouth, whether a business deal didn't go the way you wanted, or you lost a real estate deal, or a hire, or something else. How do you personally, Chris, respond to setbacks?
Well, I've had to work all my life to beat the odds, man. So a punch in the mouth or something, as long as I'm breathing and can take it. Over the years, you just kind of, your skin grows callous. You try not to get too high or too low. And I think that's important as a leader also. Like when things are going bad, your team's going to be looking at how you're going to react and how you're going to be able to take it. And so I never put my team or myself in a situation where one deal is going to make it or not, and we kind of just stick to our mission statement. The mission statement for all my companies is to help and serve our customers and clients. And so it all goes back to that's the compass, our compass, our guide, our coach. So whenever something goes wrong, even for myself, as long as I'm following those principles, I can accept whatever God may have in my plans.
Yeah, so you kind of go back and revisit that North Star about why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and I try to center myself too. Like I think taking a walk in the morning, I just kind of got back in the gym, but taking that time for yourself, like no matter what you're doing, you got to make time for yourself and time to think. I think too many business people, they get too caught up with actually doing the work instead of working on the business.
Yeah. Yeah, they all work on the business, not in the business, right? And so important.
Well, I'm saying they work in the business. So if they're in the water restoration, they're on every job. But when that's just the basic. You could be a great barber, you could be a great cook, but that doesn't mean you can run a restaurant.
Yeah.
If you want to run a restaurant or have a business, you actually have to understand the basics of how to do your taxes. You have to understand real estate, how that ties into business. You have to understand credit. You have to understand communication skills, right? Yeah. Soft skills. I think that's the main thing that a lot of people are missing now is that this younger generation doesn't have the soft skills. They're so used to texting. I remember when you had to be able to pick up the phone and in order to talk to your girlfriend, you had to be able to get through her dad. I mean, you had to learn how to talk back in the day.
Yeah, we have a 16-year-old, almost 17-year-old. Actually, I think he'll be 17 when this comes out. But my wife and I often say he's never picked up a phone where he doesn't know who's calling, right? Because he's always on his iPhone. And you and I had to grow up in an era where you had to pick up the phone and say, my mom can't come to the phone right now, or, some other.
Well, I think, I think that's the most important thing, because in business, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen, or you never know what the other person's going to say. And then really, if you're doing a good job, no matter what business you're in, it's not about what you want. It's actually about what the customer wants. It's about listening to them. And then, I firmly believe is the bigger the problem that you can solve, the more that you get paid. And so that's how I would describe myself, or is in both businesses that I'm in, I'm a professional problem solver.
Yeah, like it, professional problem solver. So Chris, you've mentioned your grandfather and your grandmother. Tell us about your grandparents and kind of the influence and what you learned from them about life and business, because it sounds like they've been pretty influential in your life.
Yeah. Most people don't get a chance to know their grandparents. So on my father's side, that was my grandmother that lived in the country. So I had a country grandmother and a city and grandfather, and then a city grandfather and grandmother. And so my grandfather was a civil rights leader. He was actually the first black mayor of Dayton, Ohio from 1970 to 1981. Very involved with NAACP. He took on cases with Thurgood Marshall. He had a chance to just, to meet a lot of the leaders, Martin Luther King, a lot of those guys. And it was kind of like a network, and he was in the Midwest. So he would, in the Midwest, a lot of people left the South and came to the Midwest for opportunities. And so Dayton, Ohio is kind of like a mini Detroit. But, he was a trailblazer. He was able to, he believed in service. And then, I think that's kind of what even drew me into wanting to do the store. I named the block after him. I call the block that we ended up buying I call it Mayor Square after my grandfather.
Really? Mayor Square in Tampa. That's so great.
Yeah, his name was James H. McGee. And so, a lot of his peers thought a lot about him, and they named the street after him. So he's got James H. McGee Boulevard there and other things like that. But I wanted to kind of give him an honor. My parents separated when I was 5 years old, so I got a chance to actually live with my grandfather. My grandmother my mother and and me moved in with my grandfather and grandmother, and so I got a chance to actually get to know him. And he took me under his wing, and he was a stickler, but I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, so he was a stickler. So he also sounds like taught you some discipline as well.
Yeah, he was former military, and but I mean the type of discipline he always impressed me on my handwriting, our dressing, our talking proper, being able to communicate. And, he used to explain a lot of things to me too, which I thought was important.
Yeah. Excellent, Chris. All right, so you got a couple of different businesses going now. As we're kind of in the Florida heat of summer here, what's next for you? What does the rest of the year look like? What opportunities and what's new for you coming up the rest of the year with your companies?
Yeah. So they're all intertwined. So Dry 24 is the water restoration company, but we have different profit centers. So instead of starting a new company, I actually open up different profit centers. So we got the e-commerce portion that's going, but water restoration from September, once you hit about September to October, last year we had over 100 jobs going at the same time.
Yeah.
But it also caused a peak for our True Value store. So in the actual hardware store, we actually have a steel dealership inside of there too. So you can imagine, like when the trees were trees were falling, people were buying, your steel saws. They were buying all of that type of jazz. And then another component of our business, which is a lot of times people think about a mom and pop store, but we've modeled our business off of like S&P 500 companies. So a lot of the S&P 500 companies, their biggest client a lot of time is going to be like your local government, your state, and your federal. And we haven't worked our way up to state, but we do have contracts like that with Hillsborough County Pet Resource Center. We do have like the water contract. And we also do get a chance to, work with local hospitals like Moffitt and TGH, and we sell to the housing authority. So we're always looking for ways to work inside the community.
Yeah. Well, a diverse customer base helps as well. So Chris, given your career and all these things you've done in business, what advice do you have for people that are, where you were 15 or 20 years ago and starting out?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want provision, you have to have vision. And so like a lot of times I didn't understand, like when the bank asked me for 3-year projections and in a 10% assumption, what they were asking about. But what they're really asking about is, do you have a plan? And so as an entrepreneur, I think having a plan is one of the most important things that you need to have. And then I also do the research. I mean, my secret sauce has been the research. I once heard Jay-Z say, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't.
Excellent. Well, Christopher Cunningham, True Value America in Tampa and Mayor's Block in Tampa. I love that.
Mayor Square. Yes, sir.
Mayor Square in Tampa. Thank you for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Hey, Mark, thank you. I really appreciate it. And to all the young entrepreneurs out there, keep working hard. It's not going to be easy, but anything that worth its while is definitely going to be hard. And one of the missions that we have that I have as an entrepreneur is that I want to help 200 small businesses. So if there's anything I can do to try to help you guys or any advice that I can give, feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.